Hey, good evening, everybody. American battlefields and historical landmarks are critical to historians and those wishing to remember and educate themselves on the sacrifices made to ensure one's nation's success. Unfortunately, many key battle sites have been washed away with time or advancements in our current needs as a civilization. Chancellorsville, there's several battle sites in Virginia that have been, for lack of better words, kind of paved over, unfortunately. However, some shining lights exist. Yorktown, Virginia is one of those shining lights. It remains intact and very well preserved for the historian or the avid history buff to explore. As we have learned during our studies, Yorktown served as the final major battle of the Revolutionary War. In September 1781, the Continental Army under George Washington, supported by the French forces commanded by the Comte de Rochambeau, and French naval forces would lay siege to General Charles Lord Cornwallis, who's the commander of really the southern forces, kind of spearheaded the middle portion of the war after the northern and southern campaign kind of stalled. Cornwallis went up into Virginia thinking that they could split the two armies in half and have better luck. That turned out not to be the case. The Continental troops relied heavily on French naval and artillery units at the time, and the combined Franco-American infantry attack on the redoubts forward of the main defense really is what caused Lord Cornwallis, kind of about 2 to 3 weeks into the siege, to decide that it was best to capitulate. Through his capitulation, it ended in essentially all major combat operations. Interesting fact, I'm sure we all remember that Lord Cornwallis did not actually surrender. He was supposedly sick that day. Instead, he sent out General O'Hare in his place. And General Washington decided to allow the Comte de Rochambeau to be the one to accept his formal surrender. So Richard Middleton stated that Yorktown was a disaster for the British. I would like to say it's probably an understatement. Following Cornwallis's capitulation, peace talks would ensue in about a year-ish time. Really, 1783 is when we saw the end of the peace talks and the end of the formal hostilities between the Continental Army and the British. And the end of these hostilities would really Britain would really recognize America's full independence from the English crown. So, about Yorktown. So Yorktown, Virginia today is maintained and preserved by the National Park Service and offers several key witness elements and sites to the battle, specifically two readouts that you can go see today. So firstly, though, I'd like to talk about the museum. The museum contains thousands and thousands of witness pieces of the Revolutionary War material, everything ranging from clothing to firearms, French cannons, colonial cannons, British cannons. Basically anything that you could imagine would be at a siege exists at the Yorktown Museum. It's intensely chronographed, it's intensely photographed. Everything offers something for the individual to learn. I would offer that the most critical piece, in my opinion, is the difference between the French and the American artillery pieces. They have these beautiful French insignias on the top of them that let you know that these were French cannons, where they were made, who employed them, etc. One of the really interesting parts about too is it's a little bit further into the town. It's actually on the bay, but you can see the place where Lord Cornwallis remained during the siege. It's a very small kind of cubby cutout in the coastline. That's where Lord Cornwallis would hide. Unfortunately, you can't actually go inside of it. It's gated off for obvious reasons, but it's set up to look exactly like when Lord Cornwallis was there. Some differing opinions do exist about Yorktown and really the significance of it. Though major combat operations ended, small skirmishes would continue. The National Park Service does a great job of explaining that the readouts that are available there are not exactly the originals. In 1862, the second siege of Yorktown happened in the Civil War, and we saw a lot of the landscape end up getting torn up. A lot of the trenches were replaced. A lot of the readouts were moved to best help defend Yorktown during the American Civil War. So when you go there, if you decide to go there, you kind of take that with a little bit of a grain of salt. That Yorktown, though it was the end of major combat operations, also, would see later combat operations happen, and that's kind of why that the readouts aren't exactly in place and the battlefield isn't perfectly laid out. Would I go there? Absolutely, yes. I've done 2 battle site surveys there. The last one I did was absolutely awesome. We went through the Southern warfighting functions, intelligence collections, fires, maneuver, logistics. We really explained everything. What I'll offer about Yorktown and why I think it's so important is that it, to me, signifies the starting of America in itself. The Continental Army, along with the French, defeated basically the single greatest military force of the time. It ended the Revolutionary War, it ended the war for our independence, and it today remains really as a status quo of importance of why we fought. I can't express this enough. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. I think they do a wonderful job of keeping with it. Anybody from an elementary school student all the way up to us graduate students, and even somebody who's getting their PhD, could value from going there and seeing the effort that's been put into maintaining the battle site, or excuse me, the battlefield and the pieces that were there. Thanks everybody, and I look forward to seeing everyone else's videos.